admire your courage, Miss...
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
So the cinematic world of James Bond began in 1962, nearly 60 years ago as of this review. Now, nearly a decade after author Ian Fleming published his first 007 novel Casino Royale in 1953, the silver screen played host to Dr. No, which was actually Fleming's sixth James Bond story, but thus began one of cinema's most popular and profitable film franchises, sitting behind only Harry Potter, Star Wars and the Marvel Cinematic Universe in terms of box office. Now, although I don't personally believe Dr. No is the best Bond film, it does have that great honour of being the first, and wow, when you go all the way back and look closely, it really is amazing how much of the hallmark touches that fans would come to love, from the opening title sequence to that familiar theme music, from 007's effortless way with the ladies to the off-his rocker villain and his secret lair. This initial entry in the series is essentially the same story that series producers and the rest of the film business would regurgitate for the next 6 decades, and it's great. Let's take a look. So we start off in Jamaica, where we witness the killing of a 00 agent by a gang of assassins in a pretty shocking scene, to be honest. They go on to steal an all-important file, the papers concerning the mysterious Dr. No. Whilst meanwhile, back in London, the Secret Service becomes suspicious when their man doesn't contact them, and it's decided to send another agent out to see what's happened. And that man's name is Bond, James Bond, here played by the immortal Sean Connery.
Good evening, sir.
Happens to be 3 a.m. When do you sleep, 007?
Never on the film's time, sir.
Now, today it's difficult to get a perspective on the impact that the first James Bond film had on its first release. I guess it was literally the first of what we know now as the action blockbuster series. Those big franchise films we expect to be treated to every other summer or Christmas. Think the Mission Impossible series, the Fast and the Furious series, etc. Now, what's interesting here is that pretty much all of the Bond ingredients the series would become known for are pretty much already here, albeit in a less overblown way that audiences became used to. There's almost a Bond checklist that the franchise stuck to for many decades. The opening gun barrel sequence, some kind of casino scene thrown in there, the obligatory meeting with M and Q, although here he simply picks up a gun, chasing around a few ladies before settling on one to help him with his mission, and maybe a few other things. A will-they-won't-they relationship with his secretary, a crazy villain, a secret lair, the list goes on, but it all began way back in this first entry. Here, Connery, to his credit, brings the character kind of fully formed, and for someone like me who grew up with the Roger Moore movies, this James Bond was a very serious and sometimes mean as hell guy. Now, Timothy Dalton and Daniel Craig would eventually bring this back to the films, but I personally remember being quite shocked by Connery's Bond, having been brought up with Bond floating around in space and having a constant smirk on his face. Anyway, no sooner does Bond's mission begin than he's knee-deep in a car chase that's followed by a fistfight with a dodgy driver that results in death by suicide capsule. Now, none of which obviously doesn't faze 007, but then jarringly, for modern Bond fans anyway, the film essentially becomes an actual spy movie, with Bond not having to do a great deal except investigate the disappearance of his fellow agent. So yeah, the pacing here is probably a lot more leisurely than what modern audiences are used to, with odd moments of action sprinkled about. Infamous tarantula in the bedroom scene probably isn't for the squeamish, although early 60s visual effects betray it a little bit. And a couple more assassination attempts, just to remind us that the baddies are lurking in the background. One of my favourites is a mid-movie chase scene involving a hearse that Bond outmanoeuvres before effortlessly inventing the 007 one-liner.
How did it happen? I think they were on their way to a funeral.
Now, obviously, Bond is more than capable in dealing with such things. The infamous moment when he shoots a man in cold blood, when his would-be killer's bullets run out, proving quite shocking for audiences of the time.
Who are you working for, Professor?
Well, you might as well know, as you won't live to use the information. I'm working for...
Mr. Smith & Wesson. And you've had your 6.
Now, almost everything you'll probably remember about Dr. No arrives in the film's second half, beginning with one of the most iconic scenes in James Bond history, if not film history. Yeah, hits here he comes upon the Bond girl in the shape of Ursula Andress' Honey Rider, who, along with boat captain Quarrel, help him navigate the island. And in the final act of the film, things take a decidedly sci-fi-esque vibe as 007 and his female companion are captured and brought into Dr. No's secret hideout and a variety of outstanding Ken Adam design sets. It's here that Andress gets to glam herself up a little bit, the baddie gets to openly discuss his devious plans, and 007 gets to seem perfectly calm despite being trapped on a secret island surrounded by armed guards and radioactive material.
You damaged my organization and my pride. I was curious to see what kind of a man you were. I thought there might even be a place for you with Spectre.
And I'm flattered. I prefer the revenge department.
So Sean Connery would make 6 official Bond films between 1962 and 1971, and although he went rogue to make the unofficial Bond film Never Say Never Again, he's still the quintessential 007, despite having a considerable body of work both before and after the series. The role will have no doubt haunted him for the rest of his days. Even today, people imitating Bond will no doubt be actually imitating Connery's portrayal of Bond. Now, Joseph Wiseman, with very limited screen time really, creates a brilliant and unusual nutcase who creates a bizarre plot to wreak havoc for his employers, the infamous Spectre.
Spectre?
Spectre, Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, Extortion.
We don't see him until really late in the story, but we do get an ominous introduction via his voice as he gives orders to a nervous scientist. And when we finally meet him, he's pretty much worth the wait. Wiseman playing him brilliantly stiff, almost robot-like, threatening but not in an over-the-top movie villain way that would sneak into the series as it went on.
Bond came to see me this morning.
Yes, I know. I gave orders that he should be killed. Why is he still alive?
Our attempts failed.
Your attempts failed. I do not like failure.
But absolutely the most famous aspect of Dr. No has to be Ursula Andress, here forever setting the standard for the Bond girl, with her appearance as Honey Rider, a seashell-collecting babe that Bond discovers on No's secret island.
Looking for shells?
No, I'm just looking.
Stay where you are.
I promise I won't steal your shells.
I promise you won't either.
And to be honest, Andress has never been the greatest actress. Here she's dubbed by Nikki van der Zyl, as she would be later on in films like She, Blue Max and the 1960s Casino Royale. Despite maybe not being the most technically talented Bond girl, I don't think any others have made such a strong impact, and here she's set the tone for all Bond actresses to follow. Now, modern audiences used to the big budget mega productions the 00 series would eventually become will probably find Dr. No quite odd. Apparently, after viewing the movie initially, James Bond author Ian Fleming described it as being simply dreadful. However, original producers Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli had a cultural phenomenon on their hands that would survive 6 decades, a dozen directors, more than half a dozen lead actors, and a global pandemic with no sign of slowing down. It all begins here. Go check it out.
Interesting. Where were you measured for this, bud?
My tailor, Savile Row.
That's so. Mine's a guy in Washington. Felix Leiter, Central Intelligence Agency. You must be James Bond.